So it seems like the only thing certain in recruiting is uncertainty itself. And today we need to take a look at a wild battle featuring one of the best prospects in all of high school football. Of course, today we're talking about the battle for five-star linebacker out the state of Alabama, Demarcus Riddick, and his decision to flip from the Georgia Bulldogs to Auburn, committing to the Tigers both over the Dogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Something we've got to break down today. Before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you surprised that Riddick commits to Auburn? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, what a win for the Auburn Tigers. Auburn is in a really interesting situation where Hugh Freeze is now the head coach, and I cannot wait to see what his recruiting efforts look like when he has a full year under his belt to evaluate players he likes and try and get in on the ground floor. And even then it's going to be difficult, because if we look, so many of these coaches such as Kirby Smart, such as Nick Saban, have been in on some of these players for multiple years, and they get to recruit off of the brands and the consistency of the brands they're at. That's something tough to jump into the fray and instantly sit down at that table, because we know how Alabama recruits year in, year out. We know how Georgia recruits year in, year out, and this is a massive win. And if you're an Auburn fan, there are two things that makes this win even sweeter than getting a five-star linebacker. First and foremost, already, if you can get a five-star linebacker, you're over the moon, especially one like Demarcus Riddick, where if we look at the 24/7 Sports Composite, he comes in as a top 30 player regardless of position, specifically the number 26 player in the nation, the number 3 linebacker, and the number 3 player in the state of Alabama. So already a fantastic win. What could make it any sweeter? Well, I present you two things. First and foremost, you get a flip from Georgia, one of your rivals. That makes it even sweeter, the fact that you get a five-star over Georgia. And secondly, not only do you get the win over Georgia, you get the win over Alabama. Because if we would have polled the average recruiting fan in college football a week ago as to saying, where will Demarcus Riddick end up playing his college football, I think a lot of people would have said the Alabama Crimson Tide, even though he was still committed to Georgia. Everything seemed to be trending away from the Dogs and to the Tide. And if you were an Alabama fan, you were over the moon. I've been on record multiple times saying this is a guy that I think Alabama really, really wants in this class, and I certainly don't think that's changed. So if you're an Auburn fan, you get a five-star. You flip a five-star from Georgia, and you keep a five-star from Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. This is about as sweet of a win as it gets for the Tigers, and I can imagine that the Auburn faithful are very excited. First and foremost, being able to get a defensive win of this caliber has got to be great, and especially whenever he can come in. Hugh Freeze already having a year under his belt, then Demarcus Riddick will come into the situation. If he's remained committed to the Auburn Tigers, we know how recruitment goes. Alabama will continue after him until pen hits paper. So too will several other schools, because he is that gifted. Alabama has a needed inside linebacker. They like his game. They will keep pushing. There's no doubt about that, and they're not going to be alone. But if he stays committed to the Tigers, he'll come into a situation where the Auburn Tigers are going to be trying to do a turnaround, and he can be a big reason as to why they try and achieve that. And that's got to be a compelling pitch. When you look at Auburn, see a team that's a work in progress in the middle of a rebuild, and say, hey, I believe I have the ability to go there and make a lasting impact. I believe I have the ability to go there and make a difference. I'm going to bet on myself, bet on the situation, and bet that I can be a major force of positive change for the Tigers. There are different ways to bet on yourself. It all just depends on how you look at the situation. There could be 1,001 factors that give any college the edge over another college. But when we look at the situation, I think there's no argument that there is a far more linear path to playing time at Auburn than there is at Alabama or at Georgia. When we look at Alabama and Georgia, we know the development those two institutions do on the defensive side of the football, really just with their players in general, where they constantly send guys to the NFL, and especially at that linebacker position, it's next to impossible to argue with. But the one thing Auburn has that I think they can say over Alabama, over Georgia, is, hey, You can come to us, be a real difference maker because we're in the middle of a rebuild. We're not a set in stone program like Alabama or like Georgia. You can help be a major catalyst for us getting on the right track. And on top of that, there's a far easier path to playing time here than there is at Alabama, than there is at Georgia. And I think that can be a very compelling pitch. So what does this mean for Auburn? Well, it's a phenomenal win. You get a 5-star linebacker, you keep him away from Georgia, and you keep him away from the Crimson Tide. What does this mean for Georgia? Well, luckily for Georgia, as much as you would have loved to have kept Demarcus Riddick, you already got a 5-star linebacker in the class not named Demarcus Riddick in Justin Williams. And Justin Williams is the consensus #1 linebacker in the nation per the 24/7 Sports Composite. A very, very gifted prospect. So, for Georgia fans, like I said, in a perfect world, you would love to have both Riddick and Williams, but you can sleep easy at night knowing who you have committed in this class and who you have on roster. So Georgia is sitting in a position where they're going to continue chugging forward. For the Alabama Crimson Tide, I have no doubt that Alabama will continue chipping away at Riddick because I truly think he is that gifted of a player and they have a needed inside linebacker. But if we look once again, they have 2 guys in this class that Alabama fans everywhere are very excited about in Okoronkwo and Sterling Dixon. 2 guys with really high ceilings. Very interesting to see how their development goes forward. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a battle we continue watching because it's a 5-star and because it's happened in spectacular fashion. And I cannot wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.